research that I work with specifically is about urban sustainability. And the problem was more defined by a group of people. And I think it had a lot to do with already their interest or their kind of disciplinary backgrounds. But they knew that they needed kind of other points of view and things to make urban sustainability a bit more of a holistic thing. So what they did, instead of just looking at buildings or heating, they sort of bigged the question really. So then just sort of made it like a big sort of broad question about urban sustainability rather just then about kind of buildings and transport. And then that way it was easier to sort of bring other people in. Mission-led research, I think, does definitely require a more interdisciplinary approach, but I might sometimes, depending on what the research question is, go a bit further and say it's undisciplined. So that way you're not even sort of thinking about what disciplines you could come in. You could think about other people who have expertise, people from members of the public, people that don't necessarily associate with a specific discipline, but have their own sort of expertise and kind of knowledge and models that they could bring into the question as well. So the institution I work for is a university, and they definitely encourage interdisciplinary working, especially when it comes to funding, because it's such a clear sort of funding priority, and I think universities, especially in Britain, really get that. But I think it gets difficult whenever the funding sort of arrives, and then there's sort of challenges to kind of, I guess, keep the excitement of interdisciplinary there. So once it's sort of, the funds sort of kind of go into the university, then it kind of spits out, but still a bit more of a disciplinary kind of approach. So I think as far as publishing in particular journals, especially if you're an early career researcher, it could still seem very much that you have to sort of specify and make a contribution to your discipline. So then after the funds arrive, it becomes very, very difficult to kind of keep that enthusiasm for interdisciplinary alive, I think. So one of the main benefits, I think, for interdisciplinarity is the potential for experimentation, which I think is really good. Because I think there's sort of this idea that in academia, you're just kind of sitting around and thinking about things, but actually there's a lot of structure. And I think interdisciplinarity does a really good job of kind of taking you away from that structure and allowing you to sort of experiment a little bit. But I think on the flip side, that sort of creates another challenge as well, because if people are so used to working kind of in a structure, they can sort of be put off by having to all of a sudden work in this sort of environment of uncertainty, and they don't know where they could go or what they could do or what they should focus on. And so it's kind of two sides to the same coin, but I think ultimately it's a good thing. Real-world impact is really, really important to myself and very much my institution as well. So they've put together these new research beacons about issues that they think are really important. So they've got one about modern slavery, I think, that they've just started last year and the year before, and also energy use and energy systems, which are, and I think in the time of globalization, are really, really important issues. So I think having impact research is really good, because then we know what the research is for and what it's being used for and what it's doing. And then I think it makes it really accountable to the people who are affected by it as well. So you can sort of really see kind of what the research would be doing in a very sort of short period of time, rather than sort of doing some research and keeping it for a while and saying, maybe this will become useful later, but I'm not sure. So yeah, I think impact-led research is important. I've definitely seen some researchers struggle with issues of fairness in the interdisciplinary research project that I've been in particular. In my experience, there's this huge divide that happens between sort of your natural kind of hard sciences and then your sort of more sort of soft kind of social sciences. And because the way that they sort of approach research questions, methodologies, epistemologies, everything is so different. You kind of get one sort of research framework favored over another. So when it usually happens, in my experience, with the sort of hard sciences, because you have the scientific method, you have numbers, you have data, you have quantitative systems. And so people, really, they sort of see that first, they see that as evidence. Whereas if you have, narratives and stories and kind of vignettes, then people struggle to see that as data. So you really sort of get one kind of research framework favored over another. And the social scientists can really feel that when they're in the research group. So they're trying to contribute to the research, but they're sort of being put sort of down saying, oh, that's not data, or that's not research. So that's one of the things that I think is really challenging to sort of cross that kind of big divide today, I think. So there are definitely challenges whenever you're trying to publish in an interdisciplinary way, and I think one of the main ones is when you're trying to co-author with multiple authors from different disciplines. And it just becomes really difficult because in one particular instance, an example that I can think of, they really struggled to get it published in a particular journal because from their experience, the editorial board didn't have the capacity to judge the work. So they had some bits of it that were really familiar. They're like, oh, look, there's data and tables. Yeah, we can totally judge and see if this is a legitimate form of research. But then there were other parts of it that they couldn't really sort of judge. It was kind of outside of their expertise and their remit. So then it was desk rejected again and again and again. And I think actually to this day, I'm not sure it's actually been able to be reviewed by anybody legitimately. So it's just been really difficult to try and put together mixed methods together and then try to find a really good sort of evaluator and evaluation method that's sort of outside the existing sort of publishing structure. So that's definitely been a challenge that we've experienced. I think interdisciplinary research is really important because it has the capacity to make things a lot more inclusive. I think the idea behind interdisciplinarity is that it includes sort of lots of disciplines, so you're not kind of building up those boundaries of, this is my discipline and that's yours, this is my expertise and that's yours. And I think it allows individuals as well to be more creative, because I think we also should remember that interdisciplinarity doesn't mean, multiple people from different disciplines getting together. It can also mean one person experimenting with different methods and kind of being interdisciplinary in their own research. And I think interdisciplinarity really allows, it's sort of a word that legitimizes somebody to experiment in those different ways and find new ways of thinking and working and adapt those sort of research approaches to their own research, definitely.